Warning, the following program has been rated T for truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Oh, we think you can. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster, Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. My truth warriors and mythbusters, welcome. Guess what? We're going to have my guest, Judge Joe Brown, on again. We're going to discuss manhood redux. You know, it's like we've discussed it before, but we're going to discuss it again because why? Because you guys know that I listen to C-SPAN. I watch C-SPAN's Washington Journal quite a bit, right? And for the past few days, what did they have on there? The issue about gun control, the issue about the March for Our Lives. And everyone that called in, most of the people that called in, mostly the people, all of the people who were Democrats, they were like in this same like bubble, the same box, talking about the same thing over and over. I mean, they said the same thing using different words. They all said the same thing. We need gun control. We can't have our kids being shot by these AR-15. Yeah, it was the same narrative. It was the same meme. In other words, this is what happens. The mainstream media carries the water for the Democrats. They set the narrative, and then the American people just glom onto that. Just go along with that. Just ride that wave. And they don't think outside the box. They can't think of anything except the same. They're all saying the same thing using different words. No, I mean, I think maybe, I was listening to C-SPAN or Washington Journal yesterday morning, and I think there was only one caller that said, well, let's get to the core of the issue. Let's get to the root of the issue, the family, the parents. Only one caller out of all the callers for the whole hour. But all the other callers were saying the same thing that the Democrats say. There was all the callers were saying the same thing using different words. They all believe that we need gun control. And we need gun control. Why? Because there are these kids shooting up schools. And our kids are not safe. That's like the end of that's the entire analysis in its totality. That's it. It doesn't get deeper than that. It doesn't go outside that box. It just stays there. So that's why I'm bringing on Judge Joe Brown, because he talks about it differently. I've heard some people, it's like the Democrats talk about it this way, and then conservatives talk about it this way, and they never meet in the middle. We're all American citizens, right? Why can't we come together and have an honest discussion? So anyway, I'm going to bring on Judge Joe Brown immediately because I know a lot of people, when he's on, I know folks like to call in and talk to him. So welcome, Judge Joe Brown, to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, how you doing? An interesting topic you have this evening.
Well, we've done manhood before, and I think we should do manhood again because,
Let's jump right into it. I want to put something out there. All right. Myself, I've been taking martial arts for 50-some years, all right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at it, but I've got some close acquaintances who are very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that if myself, and I go into schools all the time to talk to the boys and girls about character, or some of my very close acquaintances went in there, we could, with our bare hands, very quickly kill 15, 20 kids and school teachers without muss, without fuss, quietly and stealthily. And there's nobody in there, even a classroom full of kids, that could stop us. But we don't. Now, the fundamental problem is not the guns. The fundamental problem is what's wrong with the predator that's not been socialized and acculturated so that he does not kill under the circumstances that are attended on hallways or the hoods. What the problem is that for some number of reasons, which I'm not going to go into right now, we have for the last 50 years been attempting to emasculate our society, or at least we've been propagandized with that. We have come up with some ineffective ways, some deficient ways and defective ways of raising children that do not address the realistic proposition that humans are the apex predator on the planet Earth. We kill better than anything that lives here or has lived here. We even kill ourselves quite readily. So we have to be properly socialized and acculturated in order to control this violent tendency, so we act as men of peace who are, under certain circumstances, capable of displaying courage and bravery. We have to be men of peace who have it in ourselves to impose public peace, dignity, and order. We are about the business of making where we live a safer, more prosperous place with economic viability and with a code of morals and a sense of ethics with a purpose. But you see, we don't do that. We are off into a thing where it is so popular, it is the trend, where one does not need the influence of a masculine father because, oh my God, men cause violence. Well, a great deal of what people think is, what I think the term they use is hypermasculinity. It is so bad it's supposed to bring on violence. Actually, is the sum total of eons worth of acculturation of the human species so that they learn how to control their violence and do not manifest it when inappropriate. But you see, there is a common thread amongst what happens in the hood or in the hallways. And it's that these boys do not have masculine training because there is no father to stand in and give it to them. And there is no culture that gives it to them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Your main problem is let's say that you want to get rid of the guns. You still haven't gotten rid of America's common fertilizer, most common fertilizer. It's known as ammonium nitrate. You can buy it at any lawn and garden store, 25 pounds for maybe 10, 12 bucks. You know what ammonium nitrate is also used for? It's the most common ingredient in artillery shells and high explosives that the military uses. Pound for pound, it's 1.5 times more powerful than TNT. It is exactly what Timothy McVeigh used to blow up the courthouse in Oklahoma City. And he got 250 plus people, not just 17 or 18.
Well, and you see what happened in Austin with this young
man.
Yeah, exactly. So you know.
And let me clear up something else too.
Yeah.
This whole thing about AR-15s, a little bit of history. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. What happened is in 1952, 65 years ago, a person named Eugene Stoner patented what is now known as the AR-15. He sold the rights to Armalite. Armalite was a special division of Fairchild Aircraft. Colt bought them out. The AR-15 design, known as the M16, has been the military rifle for longer than any other in U.S. history. And that is since 1962 when Curtis LeMay adopted it for the guards in the Air Force who were protecting nuclear-armed bombers on runways. It is a .22 caliber weapon that has ignited a half-century-long debate in the military about whether it is powerful enough. It is a caliber that most of the time in hunting is used to kill varmints, meaning squirrels, gophers, groundhogs, and the like. Now, here's your problem with that. In the military, they think it is better to wound rather than kill, because if you kill somebody, the body can just lay there and rot. But if you wound somebody, it ties up 8, 9, 10, 12 people in the pipeline to take care of the wounded person. So we've got a weapon that's designed to wound, not kill. And as a matter of fact, the problem that you have here is that if somebody took an old, antiquated 12-gauge pump shotgun, they could do a lot more damage than got done by this Colt AR clone. You see, the ones they use in the military, real assault rifles, have one salient characteristic. This one of these are those that everybody wants to ban don't have, and that is they're actually machine guns. An assault rifle came from Sturmgewehr, which was a term that Adolf Hitler applied to a German weapon in 1944. And it is a weapon that fires an intermediate cartridge, not a rifle cartridge, which is typical of a machine gun, nor a pistol cartridge, which is typical of a submachine gun, but an intermediate power cartridge, and it becomes an assault gun, a rifle, and it is capable of full automatic fire. If you are worried about actual machine guns, be assured you don't buy them at gun shows. Where the real serious hardware comes in is the same place that the drugs come in. This war on drugs that's been so unsuccessful is also the sieve through which these serious weapons get into the United States. When you ship in cocaine, ship in some guns too. And they come from certain places that the U.S. government is very aware of. They come from South America along with the cocaine. But see, the U.S. government turns a blind eye because the legitimate reason as far as they're concerned is it raises money for black ops so that we can fight, you know, ISIS and terrorists and such like. All right? That's cocaine and American-made military weapons that come in from South America. From Korea, South Korea, they've got a native industry that's run by a company known as Daewoo, so they're making their own military weapons, and they are on the black market dumping a lot of serious military hardware that the U.S. made, along with opiates and heroin that gets smuggled into the United States with kind of a wink and nod, because what are they doing? They're trying to offset Kim Jong-un, you know, and all the black ops over there. Israel is dumping a lot of Kalashnikov-designed weapons into the U.S. because they seized arsenals were in the Arab-Israeli wars in the late 60s and early 70s. They supposedly are raising money to deal with terrorism and ISIS and all of that, so the U.S. turns a blind eye to the Kalashnikov-designed weapons that come in along with the opiates from Israel. Then we've got the stuff that comes in from the residuum of Afghanistan and from Iraq, along with more Kalashnikov-designed weapons. So you're not stopping the flow of real serious assault rifles that are real, that are capable of fully automatic fire, no more than you're stopping the drug trade. But the real bottom line is even if you take the guns away, you still have the little unmanly monsters running around loose, and they can go to a lawn and garden store and buy up 25 pounds of ammonium nitrate, which is more powerful than about 35 pounds of TNT, which is a lot of TNT. That's enough to bring down a good-sized suspension bridge.
So basically, the bottom line is this entire march for our lives is wrong-headed. It's empty. It's meaningless. It's null and void.
A bunch of little ignorant kids who don't know anything. And then the funny thing about it is just supposing that somebody decided to clamp down on them and say, in a totalitarian fashion, go take care of them and get rid of them. See, they are also wiping out their offset or check and balance to a tyrannical government. See, part of the Second Amendment comes from the old English common law, when the English commoners had a duty to the crown to be very well trained in how to use a longbow. When you had a duty to possess a bow and arrow and be proficient with it, it also became a right to possess the weapon and to be proficient. So when the colonies first got founded, there was a need for defense. They were stealing land from the Native Americans, and there was a need to defend against the reprisals that surely occurred. So what happens is all males between a certain period of life, 16 and 50 or 16 and 60, had an obligation to rise for the common defense That, by the way, meaning what? That is, by the way, the common law meaning of militia, all able-bodied males who can participate in the common defense between 16 and 60. They had a duty to be armed and proficient, and that duty became a right, so that became inherent in the Second Amendment to the Constitution. The Constitution is a set of things to impose or set up an effective government, but also provide guarantees that the government would not become a tyranny. So you have the judiciary offset against the legislative body that creates the laws, the executive branch that enforces them, and the judicial branch that interprets them and the sentences or applies them or convicts and tries them. So any violations of the law. And by the way, one thing everybody's all weirded out about judge-made law. Interestingly enough, the very first case the United States Supreme Court heard in 1792 was what is the common law. Their decision is all law in the United States is common law until superseded by statutory law. Common law is judge-made law. Common law is that body of law based on tradition, precedent, and evolving conditions of society. That's almost a quote from the very first decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. So I hear all of these people talking about judge-made law, et cetera, being an anathema when the U.S. Supreme Court 200 plus years ago declared that all law in the United States is judge-made law unless it's superseded by statute, regulation, or ordinance by some duly constituted legislative body.
Well, but wait, I want to get back. Let's judge.
Hold on. One thing, I'm getting back to the gun thing.
Yeah.
I just digressed a little bit, but here's where we get into this. You see, you have the states versus the federal government. So that's an offset, a check and balance. And when the federal government gets unpopular, you can have a civil war. We had that one back in the 1860s. But on the other hand, you see the citizens themselves are an offset to the government, and that is that they are entitled to possess military weapons. So if you get some character that decides that he's going to be too tyrannical and disregard the laws, then you've got the citizenry itself that is capable of resisting oppression. Now, I've heard people talk about why in the world does somebody get a military weapon? Well, let's look at our historical antecedents. Since this country was founded 240-some years ago, every single military rifle that has been available to the military has also been available to the citizenry, whether you're talking about flintlock, cap locker, that's percussion, you're talking about Civil War, you're talking about on the frontier, Springfield trapdoors, or Lee bolt-action rifles, which were the first that we adopted, known as the 30-40 Craig caliber, which was quite popular in the hunting field. Or you're talking about the Mauser design, which the 1903 Springfield copied. Or you're talking about the M1 Garand, which nobody worries about, which George Patton, General Patton, decreed to be the most important battlefield implement ever invented, and it is a very hard-hitting weapon and totally available. Nobody squawks about that. Many M1 carbines sit in closets around America, millions, and they used to sell these things by mail, no checks, no background check, for $5.95 a piece. Sends your money in, and they send it by parcel post. Then you have the M14, which for 6 years was our military weapon, the shortest serve we've ever had, just about. And you can get a civilian version, M1A, and even California doesn't have a problem with that, but it's 30 caliber, much more powerful. Now you've got a 22 caliber thing known as an AR-15 or the various knockoffs. Since the patents have run, it's been around for 65 bloody years, and everybody's all freaked out about it because why? We have a progressing ignorance brought about by the fact that man training is no longer appropriate. And after the Vietnam War back in 1968, you had this thing wherein it was perceived by some people in the Republic that war was a man thing, and the way to stop war was to change the way boys were raised to men. So you don't let them play with war toys, cap guns, water pistols, or anything like that. And the spread of ignorance in the public has gotten enormous as to what's what. Although you go down and you look in an arcade or in somebody's living room, and they're with the Xbox and whatever else, they're playing really violent games with some kind of far future beam weapon. See, and why are these games so popular if it is not for what's inherent in the kids? And see, there's another thing. Modern warfare is best played by kids that are adept at video games. The military is finding out about that. Operating the gun system on an M1 tank, on a destroyer, or dealing with some of the other high-tech weapons that the military has now are best done by those who've been playing video games. They even set up the controls to be about the same. So it's kind of a really stupid thing to say that people shouldn't have access to military weapons because, and then they forget that or don't know that the reason citizens were guaranteed under the Second Amendment a right to access these things was so they could remain free. See, being free is not safe. And to an extent, there's always been a collateral damage aspect to being a free society. That means you don't have an efficient police force trying to make sure that you are safe, because a very efficient police force is also something that can be exploited to oppress you. See, most of these so-called criminal rights everybody gets all weirded out about and either wants to apply or wants to forget about, are rights that go to the citizens, not to be free from oppressive crime enforcement, but to be free from political enforcement, because they look like the same thing if you back off sometimes. So we have to understand being free is not a safe condition. You have to be willing to die for it. And people have the Star-Spangled Banner that some fight about Kaepernick taking a knee on, but it says in there, land of the free and home of the brave, so it doesn't look like that's what's going on anymore. It's land of the terrified, home of the cowardly. And you've got a whole lot of people that bled, died, suffered, were mutilated, and sacrificed to get the country to the state it is now, where at least you have the freedom of expression, and they want to give up the means that has been out there to ensure that that happens. Now, you see, there are people in the world who don't think like some of the people here do. And I get a little bit peeved when I listen to these children that are, the children are just leading the way. See, that's half of the problem with why we have this violence anyway, is because you let the children lead the way instead of responsible adults knowing what the devil is supposed to be teaching these children.
Right.
See, I used to like Star Wars. A good example of teaching manhood is just exactly what you saw when Yoda was riding on young Luke Skywalker's shoulders, giving him training and whispering in his ear, a Jedi does this, a Jedi stays strong, a Jedi remembers his training, a Jedi controls his anger. Your anger, control it you must. You see, that he kept emphasizing that. That goes to the dark side of the Force. See, that's exactly what I used to get told when I was a kid. My generation, we heard from the parents, the grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, teachers, society. Act like a man, boy. Boys do this, you know, to become men. Men do this, men do that. Boy, don't do that. Don't cry. That's nothing for a man to cry over. You know, that didn't hurt that much. Get up and walk it off. Be tough. And even the military says we can make you strong, but we can't make you tough. You have to come in here that way. And they've been upset by what's going on. A few years ago, they did a paper on the first decade of the 21st century, and they were disturbed. They said, we find that all races and ethnicities put into the pot, only 28% on average of each year's high school graduates are male. We find that when it comes to college, only 32% of the college students in America, all races considered, are male. For graduate students, only 36% of the graduate students in America are male. And when it comes to the workforce, only 44% of the workforce is male. And then they came up with the telling, this is for 2000 to 2010. It was the deplorable one that all races and ethnicities combined in America, 42% of Americans 35 and under were born out of wedlock.
What was that percentage again?
42% of all Americans, all races and ethnicities, 35 and under, are born out of wedlock.
Well, listen, I want my listeners to really get that, let that sink in. 42%.
No, I haven't gotten to the bad. 42%. This was for 2000 to 2010. 42% of Americans 35 and under at that time, all races, all ethnicities combined in the pot, 42% were born out of wedlock. Right now, they're troubled because they're trying to verify these figures. But for Americans 20 years of age and under, it looks like 82% of them are born out of wedlock, all races and ethnicities combined.
Did you hear that, Truth Warrior? Wait, let that sink in. Did you hear that, Truth Warriors and Mythbusters? 82% of all children of all races born under 20 years
of age and under
are born out of wedlock. How is that cool? How is that kosher?
That's not. That means that there's no father. See, the thing goes,
there's no father figure. So no wonder you end up with men, boys, young boys who don't know how to navigate their feelings or how to, when violence is appropriate or inappropriate.
Yeah, see,
they haven't got that Yoda training, right? That manhood training.
That's it. See, here's the thing. For example, it used to be, and if you want to catch it the old-time way, check out Back to the Future and the McFly syndrome. But it used to be part of growing up was learning how to deal with a bully. You didn't have the teachers intervening. You didn't have the police intervening. You didn't have the parents intervening. You didn't have somebody whining about, oh, my God, he killed himself because they bullied him online. It was you had to screw up the personal courage and fortitude to bust the bully right in his mouth. You might get a black eye, but you might jack him up. And see, he wouldn't mess with you anymore, but if he kept bullying, he's going to run into the kid with the glasses and the books who took the glasses off and found out or showed he had some skills and jacked the bully up and hurt him.
That's right. Hey, excuse me. I mean, Judge Joe Brown, you hear my music? We're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we're going to open up the phone lines. I'm Kathleen Wells. This is the Naked Truth Report for my Truth Warriors and Mythbusters. We're speaking with Judge Joe Brown. We're talking about manhood. We're talking about gun control. We're talking about boys getting that Yoda training, right? So we're going to open up the phone lines, and the phone number is 866-870-5752. Hey, come right back with Judge Joe Brown.
It's bad, you know.
Are you a local business owner? Are you interested in increasing customer counts and store traffic or increasing traffic to your website? If you answered yes, then you need to advertise on the Naked Truth Report. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to RJ Beaton at 818-517-KRLA. That's 818-517-5752. Or email us at rj@krla870.com. That's rj@krla870.com. Kathleen Wells, the host of the Naked Truth Report, wants to hear from you. Just like our borders, the phone lines, well, they're wide open. Call in at 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. 866-870-KRLA.
Welcome. We're listening to, that's R.L. Burnside. It's bad, you know. I love that. It's bad, you know, when everyone is thinking that, you know, boys should be more like girls. Or, you know, gender is fluid. That's bad, you know? Hey, so I'm joined by Judge Joe Brown, and he's talking to us about how it's the necessity for boys to get manhood training, to get that Yoda training so that they can become men and they know when violence is appropriate and not appropriate, and they can navigate their feelings, right?
That's right. Let me tell you something that's interesting. I mentioned when we first started off, I've been taking martial arts for 50 years. I know how to do this. Quite a few of my personal acquaintances know how to do this. Most people we can kill with our bare hands without too much trouble. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Colt was said to have invented the functional revolver, and there was a saying they had in the 19th century: "God made man, Colonel Colt made them equal." Now let me give you two scenarios for all of the women that think men ought to be like them, aside from it being boring. You're a successful woman, you're a businesswoman, or you're in a profession and you've done well, you're in your 30s and you're in your deluxe 2-story townhouse or condominium, and you've had your glass of white wine and read a delightful novel, and, you know, the next day's Saturday, so you're asleep, you didn't go out that evening, and it's 3:18 in the morning when you were awakened by some broken glass from downstairs. Now, would you rather have to go downstairs by yourself to find out what the broken glass is about, or would you rather have a well-trained man laying next to you to go see to it yourself for your mutual benefit? Now, let's supposing you don't have the man there and we ban firearms like the children want. You know, it's disgusting when you let children run things, which is part of the problem. But what do you do when you go downstairs and you confront somebody like me who is a villain instead of a nice guy like me, but who knows how to kill you even by brute strength? So what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You just gave up your equalizer. So the whole thing, remember, about women's rights and we can do this, forgetting that to a great extent that's from the tolerance of men not deciding to play alley-oop on you, which you don't want us to do because you expect us to not do that. And there's a thing called acting like a gentleman. But you see, what do you do when you consider that there are people in society who commonly deal with all walks of society? We go where there are children, we go where there are other people. There are people who deal with children on a regular basis, but got drafted into the Army, volunteered for the Army, and they've killed people. They know how to do it. So there are those who deal with children and other people on a regular basis, but they don't kill because it's not appropriate. The bottom line is that you have only one way to ensure that there is appropriate behavior out of the population, and that is to inculcate and socialize them so that when they look in the mirror every morning, the control factor is looking right back at them. It's what's inside of themselves.
It's what's inside of themselves. Why don't we take a call now from David in Whittier? Hi, David. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen, and hi, Judge Joe Brown. I once knew someone who worked for your show. Yeah, Miss Akers. But hey,
okay.
Yeah, I just want to tell you something that I learned from Rush Limbaugh about a week and a half ago. He was talking about that Promise Act. I don't think many people even heard about that, but he says it caused the shooting in Florida, and what they've done, what Obama did and Eric Holder did, was mandate that they lower suspensions. Okay, let them get away with it, whatever they're doing, suspend their behavior in school. Don't suspend them though. Same with arrest. And all of a sudden, guys, I see this pattern this last couple of weeks. Constantly on AM radio reports of school authorities reporting threats from students. And I think because of the shooting, they said, hey, wait a minute, we better do something. I think maybe these have been going on, but they just haven't been reported because of the Promise Act. And so we're seeing this increased school violence and acting out because they're not being disciplined. They're not being suspended and arrested, and that has to change. They call it the restorative justice down there in San Diego, I heard on a program, but this is outrageous. And you're so right, Judge Brown, about the the out-of-wedlock births, and that has to change, and it has to do with, you know, we've heard the statistic that Americans are going to church less. They're not learning. They're not learning. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind. And the second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Kids aren't learning this. And the extreme rudeness that has developed, we've all heard that, rudeness. And it's a spiritual problem, but we've got to cramp down and change that. Promise I can get rid of that, I believe, Judge.
Okay, I think you're on the right track. Let me say this. I grew up in Los Angeles since you lived there. I went to John Muir Junior High School, and I will say this. We had a boys vice principal there we called Old Man Miller. He'd been an officer in the Army, and he had lost one eye in Korea. And Old Man Miller had a custom razor strap that he'd gotten from his barber shop, and the metal shop had affixed a handle to it, and he would back off about 5-6 feet and do a hop, skip, and a jump, and he'd tear you up. The coaches, male coaches, had a stack of ping pong paddles to replace those that they broke, giving you swats. So I can remember walking down the hallway. Joe Brown, get in here. Mr. Miller, I haven't done anything. Yes, you have, boy. I can tell it's on your mind. All right, grab your ankles, grab your knees, look at that wall, don't you eyeball me.
I got that. My brothers and sisters, we got that leather strap, too. We got that, too, Judge.
And then
you're right on.
Alan, man, why you tell Mr. Miller what we see? He's a man. He can read what you're thinking because he's been a boy too.
Mm-hmm.
See, and it's the problem with this is if you suspend a kid who doesn't want to be in school anyway, you gave him what he wanted. You know, see, that timeout stuff doesn't work. I was in
you're so right. Exactly, Judge Brown, and that's so. Have you seen those kids on the nannies, the super nanny? You know, they use that a lot. That super nanny uses that timeout, and you know what? I noticed a pattern over and over. These little kids act little animals. There's some weird affect in their behavior that's so bad.
Okay,
you're right.
Let me say this again. Remember. Most people are not vegetarians and they eat meat. Some human killed that meat. Most of the time, our ancestors killed it personally. We kill real well, and timeouts don't work. That's that Dr. Spock.
They don't. That's crazy thing.
Let me give you, since we're talking about Hollywood here, an example. Early in my career with the show that ran for 15 years, I remember getting invited to somebody's party that was out in the hills overlooking Santa Monica. And it was an outdoor party. The weather was nice. And there was some kid that was climbing up in a tree. And his mother was going, Jonathan, please come down, Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan, you're scaring Mother. You're going to fall, Jonathan. Oh, Mother is going to cry. And then when he calm down, Mama, I'll take a 10-minute time out. Oh, Jonathan, please, Mother's so worried you might get hurt. Well, inevitably, the branch cracked, the little fool fell, and he apparently broke his wrist. So Mother, in hysteria, passes out. They have to call 911, and the ambulance attendant is going, why didn't you just put him in your car and drive him to the emergency room? We have some real serious problems going on. And you tied up emergency services that might have been necessary to save somebody with a heart attack. So she's in all hysteria. But you see, this whole idea of mama crying because the child wouldn't obey, and then the discipline is come down from the tree or get a timeout. You see, what the problem is people lose track of the fact that the artificially applied pain, slight pain, the spanking, was so that the child didn't get the real pain from an injury suffered by falling out of the tree when it decided it didn't want to come down because it would take a time out. You see, we forget that aspect of the whole thing. A lot of this whole bit is the world is dangerous, is hazardous. Children that aren't used to being obedient can be standing at a park. Mother can go across the street to get something out of the car, and here's a wildly driving vehicle coming down the road. The kid, if he's an obedient kid, is taught stay or do what you're told to do. When somebody says, Johnny, don't move, Johnny freezes. He doesn't get run over. The other kid that isn't obedient, Johnny, don't move. He decides he moves anyway. He gets run over. Another statistic. You see, it's this thing. So when you get a young predator, they're crazy. They will do all kinds of stuff if you don't acculturate and socialize them. It is a difficult thing. You have to tell these boys every other thing you say. Act like a man, this is what a man does, this is so and so and so and so. Now, personally, I don't care what the LGBTQ crowd does on their own time. But you live in California, and right now they've got a thing where in the 3rd grade, they have sensitivity to gender identification or some crazy title like that. So they show this stuff to these kids, and they send brochures home with the parents, instructing the parents to not tell kids to act like a lady, act like a man, because they may decide to be or relate to or orient to some other type of gender. Oh, well and good, but you see there's a limited pool of boys from which you can select and train and raise up men. And if you don't have that, you have a problem. So they're co-opting that. And they've got one, for example, they've got an animation, and they show it to 3rd graders, and it says, my big brother likes to dress up like a girl. He likes to dress up like a girl and go to nightclubs and parties. My big brother likes to dress up like a girl and go to other parties and places and fool boys into thinking he's a girl.
Oh my!
He likes to dance with boys. This is okay. If you want to do this, then it's your right to do this. Now that's going to get somebody killed.
That the confusion is crazy. Why don't I want to get into more calls, Judge Joe Brown. Let's take a call now from Keith in LA. Hi, Keith. Line 1. Hi, Keith.
Yes, this is my favorite topic, and I'm so proud of Judge Brown. I'm in LA here. I grew up in the hood. I used to shoot pool with some of those guys that became Crips, and I remember back in the day. So, I'm 61 years old. And I just want to say I'm a self-defense expert now. I train kids in the right of self-defense. I teach them how to utilize tactics from Aikido, self-defense, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution against bullying. And I tell them how anti-bullying works in today's situations that they could deal with using the Declaration of Independence and natural law concepts. And here's the thing. I wanted to ask Judge Brown if he would maybe talk a little bit about, if he has time, talk a little bit about, in learning law, the natural law, the, Blackstone commentary. They used to teach that, back in the days of the founding, Locke and all those guys, Blackstone.
Blackstone, I'm very familiar with what you're talking about.
Yes. How come they don't, that's not allowed anymore in the courtroom?
Well, see, that's the premise upon which the common law is based, in this principle of ignorance of the law is no excuse for its violation. In other words, any fool ought to have known that what you did was wrong, so don't do it. That you did not know there was a specific law against it is no excuse. Yeah, see, this is common sense. In other words, hashtag Me Too bit. The common law and common sense law was, people are boy and girl, birds and the bees, man and woman. And if you encounter, it's nothing offensive to politely ask one time. It's nothing offensive, say, about this. In other words, even touching. Battery is defined as an unpermitted touching not done in the sense of pleasantry. They used to classically define it as, okay, you walk up to somebody, clap them on the back and say, hey, Al, what's happening? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were a friend. See, the clap on the back is ordinarily a battery under the common law, the natural law, but it's not because the guy mistakenly thought that this was a friend. This is what friends do. There was no hard feelings. But you see, we have gotten so far adrift from that we've got this idea that because we are humans, we should be exempt from all animistic type controls that apply to every other animal. It's called the nature of the beast. By the way, since you're doing martial arts, you may know a good friend of mine, Clifford Stewart, who's in Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's who started training me 50 years ago, and I started teaching him how to shoot 50 years ago. So we've been good friends for 50 years, and he was an executive on my show. By the way, for the edification, Black Belt Magazine, not so much you, but for the audience, has listed him as probably one of the most dangerous humans alive in North America. But see, you, him, we can do people in without a weapon, most people. So they are defenseless against us, and they depend on our good graces, but we don't walk in places killing folk or go on a rampage through an office building or go postal somewhere, do we? Even though we've got the ability to do somebody in. It's what's inside of us.
And Judge Brown, let me just say with this one more thing real quickly. I am right now under disciplinary, discretion or action in my school. I work in the high school, LAUSD. I won't mention which one, but I'm under right now under scrutiny with the principal because the principal, female, told me to back off once when a guy stood in my face. He was a trespasser on the school campus in a high school. I confronted the trespasser. I got there before the school police, and I confronted him, and the trespasser attacked me physically. And what I did was I stopped him. I didn't hurt him, but I stopped him. And the principal said that, made the claim that I should have backed off, and she would have been able to negotiate with him to stand down. So I told her no, I wasn't going to back off because he was a threat to me. I felt threatened, and I felt other people around me were threatened, including her.
By the way,
but anyway, he wanted to tell you that.
Interesting side note. California has basically had for its entire existence a stand your ground principle. You didn't have to retreat, and see, that's crazy. Now, Fremont High School. You remember Fremont, Fremont High School, right?
Yeah. I used to work there. I've been there.
Yeah. Okay. In the 60s, Cliff Stewart and I did counseling there, but we also helped out the rather novel security that the principal at the time had secured, ex-heavyweight prize fighter named Scrap Iron Johnson. And he used to remark, wow, all of the violence has stopped. Well, we used to do our little thing around there and apply here and there constructive force, and the school was peaceful. And I'm from the day when the gangs were Crips, Bloods, not gangster disciples, none of that. They were the Slausons, Dale Vikings, businessmen, Bobtown, De La Soul, pre-65. You're talking about some of the stuff that came later. Speaking of the thing, Cliff and I ran a playground, or he did. I worked for him and a guy who's now known Dr. Ron Chappelle, Trinity Avenue Elementary School, which was probably the roughest one in the entire city of Los Angeles at that time. And we had a lot of things going, and we had some interesting students on our playground. Skinny little 13-year-old who became known as Barry White, the late Barry White, the singer. And we had another extreme, Tookie Williams, the last person they executed on death row in California. He started a gang. We saw him back when, and he was a smart guy. We just said, man, this is rough. This guy's really smart, but we couldn't figure out a way to get him out of the swamp because of what his mother was about. And Tookie just decided he was going to be the baddest alligator in the swamp.
Did Tookie have a father?
No. So we were trying to be the father, but we kept getting all kinds of pushback from the female side, well, the only side of the family he had. So what he wound up doing on death row is he wound up writing a series of books for children to the effect of, this is not the way to do it. You have to act like a man. You have duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, and accountability. So it's a thing. It works. To show you what masculinity can do, we had a bunch of women that volunteered. There was only one guy from UCLA that volunteered. That was me. Cliff Stewart was a UCLA student, but he was the youngest playground director in the LA school system. I was his assistant, and Ron Chappelle was his assistant. And we used to take 150 kids from the first grade up to the 6th grade downtown LA every Wednesday to the movie houses, because they still had them downtown LA then, and they had none out in the hood. And patrons would say, I'm amazed. There were 150 children in here, not a peep, and they're just these three guys that are seeing to them. Why? Because we did a manhood thing, and they responded to them. Now, one time we let 10 women bring in 8 extra kids, and their 8 extra kids were starting growing wild, so the 8 of them couldn't really control 8, so us 3 guys had to add them to our 150 so we got them settled down very quickly. Just that masculine componentry coming in there. It's sort of like, look, you're giving me a headache. I'm getting embarrassed, and I'm going to embarrass you worse. And I don't care what your mama thinks about it or your daddy either, but I know you don't have one. So let's say I'm standing in. I'm going to jack you up. All right, now shut up and enjoy the movie. You see, that works. You get peace right there on the spot, which is a component that nobody wants to deal with. But you see, they forget that a lot of what functions in society depends upon the people getting along with each other. So you, me, Cliff, Ron, those folk who know what they know can really do a lot of damage with no weapon. And there's nothing anybody, the average person, can do to stop us.
Well, you know what? Let me just say, Judge Joe Brown, we're winding down now. We have like 4 more minutes. Let me ask you, where do you think this whole thing is headed in terms of the gun control and the this massive group? How do I want to put it? The whole group that is concerned with
psychosis,
the legislative change regarding gun control. Where do you think we're headed?
Well, it's not going to work however it goes, because there's ammonium nitrate, the most common fertilizer out there, that will deal with something the military used to say. They had a saying, and you should get ready for this one. Bullets kill a lot of people, but only high explosive kills enough. And see, the high explosive they talk about is the same thing that's the fertilizer that's most commonly used in America, that you need no credentials, no background check to go by. It's very easy to make into an effective explosive, and it's what Timothy McVeigh got 250 people dead using in Oklahoma City when he blew up the courthouse.
Okay, Judge Joe Brown, there's my music. I got to go, but I want to thank you for joining me on the Naked Truth Report. I want to thank, actually, Judge Joe Brown, follow him on Twitter. He's Judge Joe Brown TV, and he wants to get started like hashtag Man Monday and hashtag I Love Dad. So follow Judge Joe Brown on Twitter at Judge Joe Brown TV. I want to thank my call screener Brooke, and I want to thank my engineer Sullivan. And this is my love song to all those with deep roots in America, deep roots in California, and deep roots in Los Angeles. I'm Kathleen Wells, and thank you for listening to the Naked Truth Report.
The Naked Truth Report was sponsored by Kathleen Wells